He waited 14 days. Every morning he rose at Harrenhal, climbed to the battlements and watched the sky. Every evening he came down, ate alone, and slept in a dead castle where the walls wept with the ghosts of every family that had ever tried to hold it. He knew what was coming. He had sent the invitation himself. And on the 14th day, a shadow crossed the sun, a shadow with wings wider than the castle walls. Vhagar had come, and Daemon Targaryen walked to his dragon, climbed into the saddle, and flew to meet his death. Welcome to Westeros Within, where we journey into forgotten ages, hidden legends, and ancient mysteries. This is Blood of the Dragon. Episode 7. Daemon Targaryen's Last Stand, when killing your nephew meant killing yourself. By the year 130, the Dance of the Dragons had already consumed more than any war should cost. Kings had fallen, children had been butchered in their beds, the realm was bleeding from a wound that would not close, and then the sea caught fire. The Battle of the Gullet was a massacre disguised as a naval engagement. 90 warships from the Triarchy, Mire, Lys, and Tyrosh, swept north through the narrow strait between Dragonstone and Driftmark. Their target was not an army, it was an island. On that island were Rhaenyra's 2 youngest sons. Prince Jacaerys, the heir to the Black Cause, flew his dragon Vermax down onto the Lysene galleys. He was joined by the newly claimed dragons of the Dragonseeds, bastards and lowborn who had mounted beasts that should have killed them. Vermithor, Silverwing, Seasmoke, Sheepstealer. Fire rained on the water, ships burned, men drowned in armor. The sea turned black with ash and red with blood. But the Triarchy had come prepared. The fleet was bristling with scorpion bolts, crossbows the size of small trees. And when Vermax dove too low, a bolt tore through his wing. The dragon crashed into the sea, tangled in the rigging of a sinking galley. Jacaerys was thrown from the saddle. Arrows found him in the water. He was 17 years old. His dragon died screaming beneath the waves. 2 of Rhaenyra's sons were now dead. Lucerys at Storm's End, Jacaerys in the Gullet. The war had taken her boys, and the war was not yet half finished. But the war had also given her something she had not expected. Dragons. Rhaenyra's council had faced a desperate problem. The Greens had Vhagar, the largest dragon alive, and the Blacks needed more riders. So they called for volunteers. Anyone who believed they had a drop of Targaryen blood could attempt to claim a riderless dragon. They called it the Sowing. Most who tried died screaming, but 4 survived. Hugh Hammer, a blacksmith's bastard, climbed onto Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, once the mount of Jacaerys the Conciliator. The dragon that had not accepted a rider in decades submitted to this enormous, rough-handed man. Ulf the White, a drunkard and a braggart, claimed Silverwing, gentle Queen Alysanne's dragon. How a sot tamed the kindest dragon in the world remains one of the war's strangest ironies. Addam of Hull, a boy who claimed to be Lenor Velaryon's bastard, mounted Seasmoke. He alone among the seeds would prove worthy of the gift. And Nettles, a brown-skinned, foul-mouthed girl of 16 who did not look Valyrian in any way. She could not command Sheepstealer with blood or magic, so she fed it. Every day, sheep after sheep dragged up the hill, until the wild dragon let her climb on. Whether she had a drop of dragon blood or none at all, Nettles flew. 4 bastards, 4 dragons. The tide of the war had shifted, and then 2 of them betrayed everything. When the Blacks sent Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White to defend the town of Tumbleton against a green army marching from the Reach, the 2 Dragonseeds turned their dragons on the town itself. Vermithor and Silverwing burned Tumbleton to the ground. Buildings, markets, temples, the people who had opened their gates in trust. Hugh Hammer declared himself a king. Ulf the White drank himself into a stupor on stolen wine. The bodies piled in the streets of a town that had committed no crime except being in the way. After that, Rhaenyra trusted no Dragonseed. She ordered the arrest of Addam Velaryon, the only loyal one. She sent word to Maidenpool, where Daemon and Nettles were hunting Aemond, commanding Lord Mouton to take Nettles' head. Because if two bastards could betray, all bastards would. That was her logic. Daemon had other ideas. He and Nettles had been living together at Maidenpool for weeks, hunting Aemond across the Riverlands. The nature of their bond is debated by every chronicler who ever held a quill. Some say he took her as a lover. Some say he protected her as a father protects a daughter. Some say she reminded him of someone he had lost. When Daemon learned that Rhaenyra had ordered Nettles dead, he did not argue. He did not write letters. He did not protest. He woke before dawn. He helped her saddle Sheepstealer one last time, and he let her go. No word of farewell was spoken between them. But as Sheepstealer flew away, Caraxes let out a scream that shattered every window in Jonquil's tower. Then, Daemon told Lord Mouton to spread a message across the Riverlands. He would fly to Harrenhal. He would wait. And Aemond could come and face him, or be called a coward for the rest of his days. It was a challenge, a suicide note, a declaration of something larger than tactics or politics. Daemon Targaryen was done running. He had run his entire life, from his first wife, from his brother's court, from the consequences of his own recklessness. He had been exiled and welcomed back, exiled again and welcomed back again. He had married 3 women and outlived 2 of them. He had fathered children and sent boys to die. And now he sat alone in the ruins of the most cursed castle in Westeros and waited for the one fight he could not win. 14 days. On the 14th morning, Aemond arrived. He came on Vhagar, the oldest and largest dragon in the world, a beast so vast that her shadow could darken a town. She had flown with Visenya during the conquest 100 years ago. She was ancient, enormous, and terrible. Beside Aemond sat Alice Rivers, his pregnant companion, a woman some called a witch. Daemon was already in the saddle. Caraxes, the bloodworm, was lean and red and scarred, smaller than Vhagar by half, faster, meaner, a dragon that had never lost a fight. The 2 dragons rose above Harrenhal as the sun began to set. What happened next was witnessed from miles away. The roars could be heard across the countryside. Farmers dropped their tools. Soldiers stopped marching. The sky turned orange with dragonfire so bright that the small folk believed the heavens were burning. Caraxes was quicker. Vhagar was stronger. They grappled in the air, claws locked, tails thrashing, fire pouring from both mouths. Caraxes bit into Vhagar's neck. Vhagar tore Caraxes' wing membrane. They spiraled downward, locked together, falling toward the God's Eye Lake below. And in that fall, in that plummeting, screaming, burning descent, Daemon Targaryen did the thing the songs would never forget. He stood in the saddle. He unbuckled his riding chains, and he leapt. From the back of Caraxes, across the open sky, onto the neck of Vhagar. He ripped the helm from Aemond's head with one hand, and with the other, he drove the Valyrian steel sword Dark Sister through his nephew's remaining eye. Aemond's scream was swallowed by the wind. The 2 dragons, still tangled, crashed into the God's Eye. The impact sent a column of water so high it was said to look like a geyser from the old world. Vhagar sank. She was found years later, when the lake's waters receded, with Aemond's skeleton still chained to her saddle, and Dark Sister still driven through his eye. Caraxes somehow lived long enough to drag himself to shore. His entrails were falling out. One wing was gone. He crawled across the muddy bank of the God's Eye and died there, in the shallows, facing the water where his rider had vanished. Daemon's body was never found. The singers say he survived, that he crawled from the lake and found Nettles and lived out his days in some hidden valley, done with thrones and wars and the weight of a name. The histories say otherwise. There are queer currents in that lake and hungry fish. But this much is certain. A man who spent his whole life refusing to be what anyone needed him to be, a loyal brother, a faithful husband, a responsible prince, chose in the end to be something no one expected. He chose to die, not for a crown, not for Rhaenyra, not for the black cause or the rights of succession. He died because Aemond had to die, and no one else could do it. That was Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, the rider of Caraxes, the wielder of Dark Sister, the man who leapt. So tell me this, did Daemon know he was going to die when he flew to Harrenhal? Or did some part of him still think he could survive? Write it in the comments, and if you want to hear what happened after, when the dragons began to die, when the queen who won the war lost everything, and when a boy who watched his mother burn was left to rule the ashes, subscribe to Westeros Within and join me for the next chapter. Because next time, we learn the cruelest lesson the dance had to teach. No one won.